Euthanasia or mercy killing is something that I could never ever condone as a doctor. I've never been asked to do it, and none of my patients that I've been treating have ever told me that that's a form of treatment or end that they want. I've worked in care of the elderly, and in my role as a GP we have palliative care as part of our team work, really. And the most important thing about end of life for people is that they're kept comfortable. And notoriously, Harold Shipman was a person who thought that he was making people more comfortable by giving them just a little bit more morphine. Well, he was one of the most notorious serial killers of our time. Now, this thing about choice, that people have the choice to commit an act where another person dies because they're doing it for their own good, how do we know that that's actually true? There are so many incidents where we have relatives asking about taking power of attorney for their elderly uncle, and you know, we're always very careful not to allow someone to decide that someone does not have the capacity of will or capacity of their minds to decide about financial matters. This is because we have a duty to protect people who are frail, and that includes frailty of mind. When I was doing care of the elderly, of course it was very upsetting, because often you would be on call late at night and you'd be going to a ward where a lot of people were difficult circumstances, with relatives often sitting by their bed, and it was distressing. But the most important thing of all was that the patient was kept comfortable, and that the death was in dignity both for the patient and for their relatives, because it is a moment that they remember and has a profound impact on them. And the grief for these people can be made so much more comfortable if they think that their loved one is at peace. Now, can't always have this, and of course there are exceptional circumstances where young people may get cancer, where they may have young families who have to go through all sorts of difficult scenarios where perhaps they might lose their hair, or if they were once a vibrant person they might lose weight and not be the same sort of energetic parent that they were, or you know, husband or wife. Now, once again, I think what happens in my experience during the most sort of traumatic and, let's say, the last or dying days of people, is that they actually become a little bit more, I suppose, confusion would be one word, but unaware of their surroundings. So they seem to go into another plane, and that's partly because we give them pain relief, or they're on a multiple concoction of medications to control nausea or to control dizziness, or, you know, pain of course being the major one, or sleeplessness, etc. So they're already in a different state. Now, I understand when people have relatives that gain a lot of press, where, for example, somebody has capacity of mind but is losing their bodily capacities and does not want to die in an undignified way, that they might at some point say, well, actually, if I had the choice, I really wouldn't want to live, and in that case I would want someone to help me to end my life. I think that is a situation where a court has to decide, and where it has to be weighed up in many, many ways, what the circumstances of that is and what the consequences of that is. And I think that ethically you could never come to the conclusion that you should end somebody's life. And on the other hand, in our psychiatric services, we spend a lot of time risk assessing people who want to commit suicide or who might want to self-harm. And the most important thing that we do in those circumstances is to prevent that self-harm. And we prevent that self-harm by helping their minds to, I suppose, get better from that angle. So if they're very deeply depressed, or they've had an unstable life, and there's been lots of difficult circumstances where they've been brought up and they feel that they don't have any choice, or that they have a very dark future or can't even see a future, then we try talking therapy to help them through that, as well as medication to help them through the lowness of their mood. And under no circumstance do we condone that they should be able to do that. And in fact, we do all we can to prevent that from happening, because we realise the repercussions of that. And also, when people come in having committed dramatic acts, for example, overdoses of teenagers, where they've decided that that's the only thing that will get people's attention, or that's the only thing or course of action left to them, we once again have teams of people who pick them up and say, let's get some talking therapy, let's get them in a safe situation, and let's try and medicate what we can so that their moods improve and that they see some quality of life. One of the things that I do as a GP is look after one residential home where there are quite a lot of elderly people, and also another home which has very young people from the age of about 18 onwards who've been confined to wheelchairs through brain injuries, either at birth or because they've had a car accident or they've had some sort of tumour, and so they have profound damage to their minds and also to their capacity to perform daily functions. However, they're in a state where they can actually communicate, even though that communication may be a typewriter which they press, which produces a sound, and some of those typewriters have keyboards which have got pictures on them or actual words on them rather than just the alphabet, or they may have the alphabet. And in that way they can communicate with the person and have the dignity and the capacity to do so. Now what they do in this place is they have many activities where they have an orchestra, or they might have activities where they do painting, or have community projects where they might produce baskets. So they have a whole life where they can have pleasure, they can overcome their circumstance, and they can be with other people where they enjoy group activities and have a quality of life. Some even have independent flats. Now, this would be something that a person who might believe in euthanasia might decide that actually, because they don't have the capacity to say whether they want to live or die, perhaps it would be a good idea if they didn't. So I think from that point of view I would be very against euthanasia, and any debate that I've attended that has had this topic has always come to the conclusion that it is not something that we as a civilised society can ever condone. Can you cut it?